Today I'm going to talk about how to be the voice of the user and how that impacts growing an app, especially for a Gen Z audience. My background, if you don't know me already, I've been working in consumer social apps for quite a while, specifically targeting Gen Z and also helping companies figure out their strategy to speak to them, market to them, build products for them. And Gen Z right now meaning kind of high school age and college age. I also, for House Party, one of my many hats, I'm sure you all wear many hats, everyone's in startups, is I manage our research program. So a lot of my job is translating between the user and the product team and kind of figuring out, what goes between them, and then also kind of conducting focus group surveys, things like that, and finding ways to translate that back to the rest of the team. So if you don't know House Party, it is a face-to-face social network. This should be a GIF. We'll see. Maybe not. But it's a face-to-face social network that allows up to 8 people to video chat at the same time. The main thing that we focus on is something that we call presence, which is basically that when I open the app, you as my friends know that I'm in the house, which is what we call being online. There's no calling. If you've ever met a teenager, you know that calling them is the most anxiety-inducing thing you could do to them. So we don't do any of that. You just appear. They can see a list of all the friends that they have that are in the house, talking to other people, and join them spontaneously if those rooms are what we call unlocked. And 90% of our users are under the age of 24. 60% of them are in the US. Our average user has 23 friends, so it's definitely a closed, intimate social network. And our average user spends over 60 minutes a day on the app. There goes the GIF. So this is when someone's in the house, you open it, see who's there, join them. So let's talk about what it means to be the voice of your user. I'm sure all of you have a small subset of users that are very, very vocal about things they like, they don't like, suggestions, and that's great. But to get a really holistic perspective, you need to implement something pretty well-rounded as your research program. You also need to be able to, once you've done that, create something that's actionable and digestible for the rest of your team. And also keep in mind that if your team is not your demographic, which my team very much isn't, I know I look like a teenager, but you need to be able to do something that gets everybody else aligned as well. So I'm going to give you my 3 tips for being the voice of your user. First is meeting your audience where they are. And that doesn't mean just physically, that also means mentally. I think most of us know traditional research programs to be kind of 2-way mirrors in a sterile room and long surveys that you email to people. But for me and my demographic, I had to take a look at those models and realize that they weren't the right fit for my demo. It doesn't generate authentic results when you make your users feel uncomfortable and get them outside of their comfort zone. So you really need to figure out where they are and meet them there. Here's my focus group. I still do focus groups, but I travel around the country, to suburbia, places that represent real America. We're based in San Francisco, by the way. So I don't feel like San Francisco teens necessarily represent, our main user. So we travel. We don't do the whole hide behind a mirror thing. We sit down, have pizza, soda, and actually get to know them. They get to know us. We're really open, and suddenly it's just a very chill conversation. We don't feel like they're parents, and we're able to learn a lot. We don't go in with a script. We do have an agenda. We do have objectives that change depending on what we're trying to learn, whether it's for a marketing, something we're trying to create for marketing, something we're trying to create for the product. We will have an agenda, but we generally don't go scripted, and we learn a lot. For surveys, we do them, but when we do, they're quick, they're to the point, and the way that we get them in front of our demo it varies on what we're trying to do. Email is really ineffective for House Party users. They don't check it. It's school related, especially over summer. They're not checking it. They don't click. If they do click, they're not taking a survey. It's a whole thing. So, I'll tweet out a survey, or I will group text a bunch of our friendlies, and they'll post it on their social media. There's a lot of different ways that we've kind of got these surveys in front of people. We also recently added games in House Party. That was something that came out of a focus group that we felt like we needed to shift towards that. So we've been adding these fun in-app games that are really engaging when you're chatting with your friends. To launch those games, we needed to put them in front of users. So instead of having kind of a very controlled environment where you're watching somebody play the game, I handed out the beta link to different builds to a lot of different teenagers, and didn't give them a limit on who they could share it with, so it could have gone really wrong, but so far it's been great. Because for us, at least, we're a social app. We want to see people using a beta link and using a beta build to do what they actually would do and use it with real friends. Tell us if it's fun, if it's not fun. We don't want the reason for the game not to be fun because they didn't use it with real people. And finally, user interviews. I think these are really important, one-to-one user interviews. But again, what I said about being in San Francisco is not really representative of our users. So kind of posting on Craigslist, having people come into the office doesn't really work for us. Luckily, I work in an app that does video chat, and all the users I'm trying to reach have the app. So that's something that's a really easy way for me to add somebody as a friend, have a 15-minute conversation with them. I always say, you can delete me now because I'm going to be in the house all the time and annoy you. But a lot of times they don't, and these kids will wave me, which is kind of how you summon somebody if they're not in the house. They'll wave me at 9 o'clock at night and be like, I just had this amazing idea. I was with my friends and we want a game like this. So it's really great. Second step is to step outside your comfort zone. I kind of said this already, but it's so important that for you to understand your demographic, you have to step outside your comfort zone so that they can stay inside their comfort zone. You need to let them teach you about themselves instead of making assumptions, and you really need to find a way to step into their shoes, going back to that physically and mentally piece. One of the things, though, that's funny about stepping out your comfort zone is that since I text teenagers all day, my whole lingo has changed. So then you need to be able to step back into your comfort zone when you're not around your demo. These are some screenshots from my phone. I spend all day on Twitter DM, texting, iMessage, Instagram DM, House Party, YouTube comments, I don't know, TikTok, everything. Again, to meet them where they are. You guys might spend most of your day on Slack or email and might have maybe a 9 to 5 schedule, which is great. And that's great if your demo also does that. But if they don't, you don't want to try and onboard them to another way of communicating that isn't your app, right? You wouldn't want to create a Slack group for teenagers if they don't use Slack already. So, you have to just get with it. And then the other thing about timing, I mentioned the 9 to 5 schedule. If you go into especially Gen Z thinking that you can have that schedule, you're wrong, because if you're trying to talk to them at 10 a.m. when you have a free block, they're in math class, right? So there's very specific windows across time zones that work for them to engage with you, when they're going to respond to you, when they're going to be open, when they're not going to be stressed. So you really have to take into account all of those things. One other thing quickly about kind of getting involved with where they're at online is I actually also run House Party's Twitter account, which has really, really helped me stay kind of on the beat with the community and understanding what's happening in their world, what's going viral, what's trending, things like that, but also having a really, really easy way to connect with even more of our demo for research purposes. If somebody tweets something interesting, I can directly DM them and be like, hey, this is me. I work at House Party. Do you want a house party? That was the slide for that. And the final thing is involving your team. So, as I mentioned before, any of these things that you're learning, you have to find a way to translate those learnings to bring back to your team so that they can design better, they can build better, they can market better. I involve them from the get-go. So those focus groups that I talked about flying to, I actually bring the product design team with me to those things. And, we'll be kind of in the back of a restaurant and a huge pizza place and separated by tables, and there's 6 of them, and I will place them around the room, and they're there, they can feel it, they can see it, they're talking to teens just as much as I am, and they're really learning and becoming very aligned. And it's really fun because at the end of every night when we do these, they're buzzing and they have all these ideas and they suddenly are like, oh my God, I feel this pain. I know exactly why I'm going to do this thing now. Like, we have to put this on the roadmap. So I think that in itself is really powerful, especially if you have members of your team that don't often interact with your demo. Put them in front of them. One of the features that came out of this, as an example, is our notes feature. So when you're in a party, you can pass a note, essentially send a text without leaving the group video chat. And this was something that we were at a focus group, and suddenly, it clicked for 50% of the team at the same time, and they're like, okay, done. It was in the next release. So that's really great, and it's one of our most used features now. Another thing that came out of this was actually our newest game, but it's our most successful game. It's called Chips and Guac. If you've ever played Cards Against Humanity, it's kind of the same thing within the app. But all the content is 100% original, and it all came from a collaboration between hundreds of high schoolers, college students around the country. I had Google Docs going, and they were adding in all these different descriptions, phrases, and checking each other. I mean, that's not cool, that's relevant, things like that, which has been really great because as soon as we added it into the app, it is our most successful, and the screenshots are wild. They put on social media. It's been a really, really great game for us. So, in conclusion, meet your users where they are, step outside your comfort zone, and involve your team. I think, obviously I'm talking about a Gen Z demo. That's where my expertise lies, kind of under 24. But all of these ways to adapt to the traditional research model, I've applied. I used to work in sports tech, politics, and music festivals, and it's the same thing. I've kind of used these same methods. So you can definitely figure out a way to adapt it for your demographic. Have fun today. And if you are interested in more Gen Z tech, how to reach college kids, how to reach high schoolers, I write a little bit on Medium, and I tweet about it, so follow me. It's just Julia Onken. And yeah, come find me later, ask questions, say hi.